Live.
I am recording.
You're listening to the Verhoeven Effect podcast. I'm Conlon.
And I'm Nathan.
Today we have another very special episode. We have Miracle Mile, the 1989 movie, which I have never seen before. And we're in the middle of I was like
nuclear
panicking.
war.
Yeah. So I was panicking. It's like, oh crap, I forgot to pick a movie. It's like, so I was just going down the list. And I vaguely heard this on a podcast where they talked about another guy's movie called Cherry 2000. I don't know if you've seen that or know what that is.
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
So this was his other movie he did. I was like, oh, that one's about like nuclear panic. So like, yeah, let's do that. So that's how I've chose this movie. Do you have a history with this movie, Nathan?
Yeah, I've seen both his movies. And I like this more than Cherry 2000.
Okay.
Yeah, because I watched this originally when it came out, and I was younger because I would have seen this in like the late 80s, early 90s. And I remember like not appreciating it as much back then, but then I watched it in like 95 or 96. I was like, oh, it's a pretty cool movie. You know, it's a quirky movie.
Yeah, well, if we compare it to last week's War Games, like where it was more about like the mechanism of nuclear warfare, this is about like the personal kind of like response to the threat of nuclear warfare. So
yeah.
So it came out May 19th, 1989, directed by Steve, I'm going to say Denariet. I don't know.
Yeah.
He's American, so it's probably like DeJarnett.
Yeah,
so
there's no weird pronunciation there that I know of.
And again, like he directed Cherry 2000, which I haven't seen, which is kind of a weird, like vague apocalypse, like consumerism movie, if I remember the podcast correctly. So, and
the other weird about Cherry 2000, it stars Melanie Griffith as like it's like a sex robot.
No, she's not the robot.
Or
she's like a bounty hunter looking. They're trying to find like parts for his sex robot or whatever.
Oh, okay. I knew a sex robot was in it. I thought it was.
So yeah, the sex robot is Cherry 2000, but it stars who'd you say?
Melanie Griffith.
Melanie Griffith, but she's not the title character. The title character barely has any agency within the movie that it's named after. Because the other thing is, like, Melanie Griffith has like red hair, so it's like, well, obviously she's got to be Cherry 2000. Like, no.
Okay. See, that one did not make as much an impression on me as this one did, apparently, because I thought Melanie Griffith was the sex robot. But.
I mean, I haven't seen the movie, but I remember like.
No, you're right. I looked it up while you were talking.
I remember like, well, obviously that's it. It's like, no, it's a counterintuitive movie title. So yeah, he did that Cherry 2000, and also he like has like a writing credit on Strange Brew. So
Yes, one of the script writers on Strange Brew.
So he does have like a comedic side. I mean, like, I don't know, there's some comedy here, but Cherry 2000 is more of a comedy. It's just kind of a strange movie. So this is a more of a serious movie, but it's still got some comedy in it. Cinematographer Theo van de Sande, who's Dutch.
Okay.
He shot. So he shot there. He did like this. He did Volcano, like the 1998 movie.
Okay. Isn't that's the one with Tommy Lee Jones?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he did Blade.
Nice. Okay. That is a cool movie.
Yeah, he's got kind of a weird filmography. But I was also thinking about like, when you point out like cinematographers, is that like they aren't necessarily like responsible for a like they're more technicians. So if a movie fails, nobody blames them as long as the movie looks cool. Like they did their job.
Yeah.
So I remember like Volcano was like a huge bomb, and then like a year later he's doing Blade. So obviously he wasn't. There's no like cinematographer's jail in Hollywood.
Yeah.
But also you don't get
it
that
helps the
money.
director's dream, but yeah, you're not
Yeah.
responsible for it if it fails.
Yeah, so you're just more of a technician. You're not spending 3 years on a movie usually. So, um, unless you're just one of those guys where it's like you're just attached to the hip with some director. It's like you go where he goes. um, Written by Steve DeJarnett or whatever. I'll just say DeJarnett.
Yeah.
Cast Anthony Edwards from, of course, everybody. I don't know. Maybe nobody knows what ER is anymore. Has there been an ER reboot yet? Have they just done that?
You know what? I don't know. I remember him from like Northern Exposure as the,
Oh,
but I
really?
never watched ER. Yeah, he was one of
Oh,
the quirky characters.
I always thought I always thought of those being simultaneous. I didn't think like one existed before. I didn't think that existed before ER.
Yeah, Northern Exposure I think was from like 91 to 93.
Yeah.
And yeah, and ER was like 94. Okay, that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah. Because I believe like Michael Crichton had like a credit on that, and I think it's like that had to been post like Jurassic Park. I mean, it wouldn't have to be, but that's like you knew his name after Jurassic Park, really.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Mare Whittingham. I vaguely recognize her. I don't know if you know who she is or the other movie. Like I saw like the like snapshot of her is like she was in Turner and Hooch. I was like, okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to think because she's a very unique looking woman. I'm trying to think of what I remember her from besides this. I think she was in one of those big budget westerns that Kevin Costner did.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
She played a role in one. I can't think of. It wasn't Dances with Wolves. It was the other one. I can't think of what it's called. But
I think she's also like in Yellowstone or whatever, which is like the biggest TV show right now, and I have never seen one episode. But
me and Stacy tried to get into it, and we're like, nah. It was like silly. It's like how many people does have to die to run a ranch? That's always my question. Like they've killed like 15 people. No one's asking any questions. And this isn't some like post-apocalyptic Montana. It's just like, what is going on with this? I just couldn't get into it.
Yeah, every time I saw the trailer, it's like this just looks like Sons of Anarchy, but with like cowboys.
Well, it's just a bunch of. I mean, to be honest, it seems like a bunch of assholes that are kind of criminals, and they have some weird code. But at the end of the day, it's like you're just criminals and murderers. How am I supposed to get in? No, it's the family and it's the history, and it's like I couldn't do it. But some things I just don't. Some things don't click with me that people like.
Yeah.
And they, it's just like Game of Thrones. Like, have you seen that? You seem like a guy that would like that. I said, well, I read the books. How's the TV show? It's great. The first 3 seasons amazing. Not so much after. Have you seen House of the Dragon? It's like, no. Have you seen Foundation on, Apple, TV? It's like that's the last thing that really I thought was cool.
Have you seen Severance yet?
No, I've been meaning to get around to it.
Yeah, I finally got around to it because every podcast is just like, have you seen Severance? And then they don't say anything about it because it's so weird and interesting. So I can't say anything about it.
I might have to check that out then.
I think it's only 10 episodes, but yeah, it's just so weird. And it's like, it's interesting also it's Ben Stiller, and it's like, I don't know. It's like shot. So many of the shots they use in it would just seem like a mistake. It's like, why are you It's like someone's head is just like at the bottom of the frame, like the frame is cutting off their heads. There's just a giant empty space in the background. And it's like, why is this working? This should be a mistake in any other film or television show.
Yeah, it seems like a lot. It's like that green palette.
Yeah.
That they shoot things in to make it look like the 70s, or kind of not the 70s, but like an ambiance of like 70s and 80s.
Oh,
office.
Yeah. Well, because the office area is definitely kind of giving off that kind of weird vibe of a weird like 60s or 70s movie. And then, then when you go out in the real world, it's just like drab normal, boring our world. Because like the thing that really like made me go like, oh fuck, this is just like, because you know the plot of it. Do you know the plot of it?
It's something about you go to work there, but they erase your memories every day.
Yeah, it's, when you get in the elevator, like they take a procedure, and it's basically once you enter the elevator, you basically become your work self, which has no knowledge of you on the outside. Um, and so there's like this great scene where like somebody gets in trouble where they have to like read this thing like until somebody determines that they actually mean it, and so they've been like reading this statement aloud, like very weird, like, you know, cult stuff where it's like I am the one to blame or whatever, stuff like that. And like they get in the elevator and they're like, we'll try again tomorrow, and they're like, but I read it 350 times, like we'll try again tomorrow. And it's like, okay, well then they're gonna get rest, and then like the elevator closes and it opens back up, and it's like for them there is no sleeping, so she just went in the elevator, had no respite, the elevator opens, back to work, and you got to read this thing over and over again.
Oh wow. Sounds like a descent into madness.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to check that out. Being they just raised the price of that, I better start getting my money's worth.
Yeah. Oh, did they raise the price? Oh, I didn't notice.
Yeah, it went from like $4 to $6 or something.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, yeah, it was like, because I forget I have it, and it's like, why am I should probably cancel this because I'm not using it, and then a show like this goes on there, and then it's like, and then you watch it, and it's like, I guess they do some pretty good stuff.
Well, me and Stacey watched like all the Ted Lasso stuff, and there's some other. There was a thing about the New Orleans hospital. It was like a 5 or 6 part series about the people that got or the Katrina things that happened.
Yeah.
Which that's always uplifting. You see that stuff and you're like, oh wait, this is America. This is happening wait a minute, hold on. It's like, oh, this is a drama about some poor country that got flooded and they can't get all the people. It's like, no, these are Americans. Louisiana's a part of the United States.
See, they should get some like French like film crew team to make some like desperate drama and like do it in French, and then make people believe like, oh, this is some other country, and then the reveal is like, no, it's America.
Yeah. There's a guy like going into seizures because he can't get insulin. It's like, what kind of hellhole country is that? Is this some kind of Eastern European shithole? What is? No, it's like Dallas, Texas, and just speaking another language, throw you off. But yeah.
Somebody's
Anyway, we're talking about Miracle Mile.
Yeah, Miracle Mile. So we have Act 1. We've got Anthony Edwards as Harry Washello. That's an interesting name. It's probably weird. The weirder the name, the more like it has to be real.
Yeah. Like no one would really want that
name. Yeah. He's playing a trombone and giving a voiceover. Then there's like an explosion that's heard, and then the titles pop up. Miracle Mile, like with a purple screen background. It's weird.
And then also Tangerine Dream did the soundtrack for this.
Yes. If you don't know who Tangerine Dream is, they did like, there was like a spell in the 80s where they did like 20 movies.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They did what Tangerine Dream stuff
they did like Thief. They did like
Thief.
They did
Sorcerer.
Yes. What was the other? They worked with Michael Mann again in his weird Nazi horror movie.
Oh yeah, The Keep. Yeah, that's a great
Keep.
soundtrack. Yeah, we got to talk about that because that's one of the soundtrack in this movie for the scale of this movie.
Yeah,
really made it seem like a big movie.
Oh yeah, it's a great soundtrack.
It's really cool.
Especially for like an 80s movie, like you really have to have something special to stand out as an 80s movie soundtrack. So
yeah,
I mean, but this is like a soundtrack. I don't think there's any like what do you call that? There's no like music from a band or whatever. It's just all score.
Yeah.
But still. We have
Here
a
we go. Here we go. Okay. They did a lot of stuff. Tangerine Dream's German, so there's a lot of German movies on here I've never seen. Their first big one was Sorcerer.
okay.
Everyone remembers Sorcerer. There's a lot of heads out there. Then Thief, and then Kamikaze, and there was The Soldier, The Keep, Risky Business was their famous one. And that's Firestarter, the '84 version. They did that. Legend, remember that one?
Yeah.
They did that.
That's one of those. I remember a lot of images of that movie. I have never actually watched that movie. I don't know any of the plot to it. I just know, you got that one guy is the devil, and then Tom Cruise is in there.
Yep.
And
Vision Quest.
Okay.
What's the other one? And then there's a bunch of them on here. You can tell they went from German to American cinema.
Well, I was looking up their Wikipedia, and I don't know if it's accurate, but like the whole thing with the band is very weird because there's like 60 different people. Members. Yeah. They've just like moved in and out. And I don't know if like one guy's kind of holding on to it or if it's just changed hands, but they're technically still around.
I would describe Tangerine Dream as an art collective of musicians.
Yeah.
Just kind of get together and work on, because all they are is just synth driven.
Yeah.
And they've remained that way. The last thing they did was Grand Theft Auto 5.
Yeah, they did some like interstitial stuff in the background or whatever.
Yeah. But there's all kinds of German TV and stuff. But anyway, it's just cool that it's like, I know this is Tangerine Dream, and I went and looked it up and was like, yep. Because I have like 5 of their soundtracks I bought on disc.
Yeah. Such a great name for a band, too.
Yeah, oh yeah. Amazing.
So then there's like a sequence of like a documentary or whatever, or kind of a science doc, and it's like a Carl Sagan-esque description of the Big Bang Theory or the Big Bang. They pull out to reveal it's a television. You see Harry's like bored in a museum. There's a voiceover from Anthony Edwards where he says, and it took Harry Waschel. Oh no. Yeah, it's him. He said it took Harry Waschel 30 years to meet the right girl. He leaves the frame, and then Mare Winningham is there as Julie Peters. She walks into frame, and then credits start appearing on screen. They're in a museum. I guess it has to be a museum at the La Brea Tar Pits, I'm guessing.
I'm assuming, yeah.
It's just all bones and stuff like that. And then I thought it's like, oh, is he a teacher and like he's taking kids on his school? But no, he's just like interfering with a school trip that's going to the La Brea Tar Pits, which is weird. Because then he starts like giving like false information to the kids, and like the teacher eventually comes in and is like, hey, stop that. And then you see different shots where like Julie and Harry are like kind of like barely missing each other, and then like, he gives like I think he like walks out and like, he was like going to talk to her, but he doesn't, and then he walks out and he's like, I guess that wasn't gonna happen. And then he's outside like by the fence that overlooks the tar pits, and then she just shows up and talks to him, and so it's like, oh well, that was easy.
Yeah. She knew he was stalking you. She knew that you were stalking her.
I mean, she was smiling at him, but
yeah.
Which usually that's, I guess. They are weird people.
Yeah, they're strange.
She's a waitress in LA, and he's like a trombonist or something.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, man, was cheap that rent? Because like these jobs, they can't be bringing in the money.
This is kind of like the end of the imagination part of Los Angeles, where it's like, you can come here and find your dreams and look at all these quirky people. Now it's just like dark, industrial, kind of corporate.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, 6 cops like split a closet to live in because they have to live there. This was still like, oh, you can live in kind of rundown stone buildings near the downtown. It's like, that doesn't exist anymore unless you're on Skid Row or something.
Yeah, you can't have free time and have housing. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, there's no like,
you have a 24-hour job and a house as just kind of like collateral for like, hey, look how successful I am and I don't live there.
yeah,
And then you point out all the homeless people, it's like, at least I'm not them. It's like, well, who's living?
yeah, they're running around screaming, crapping on the sidewalk, shooting up black tar heroin or whatever. It's like, yeah, who's really alive here?
They do a quirky
These
thing
people
that
could be prophets of God for all we know. I mean, you really got to give them a chance. See what they're saying.
they have all this time to think.
Yeah.
um So then they do a quirky thing where they go to a restaurant and they buy the lobsters to toss them in the ocean. Which all I was thinking was like, yeah, that's all I was thinking. It was like, I don't think you're helping them, but yeah.
Because those are from the East Coast.
I don't know. I guess. Yeah.
It was just kind of a thought thing more than.
Yeah. Well, it's here to show they're quirky and whatever.
Yeah.
Probably have somewhat peaceful intentions that they're unwilling to eat a creature that they see alive, and so you show that you immediately show that they have like some sort of empathy. So, then Harry. Oh, wait, no. Then they cut to Harry playing trombone. I thought this was like, it's like what do we call that? It's not an amphitheater. Oh, it's just like an open air. It's like a hill where there's like stone seating, and then there's kind of a circle at the bottom, and it's like those performances are done there. Which I thought this might be the famous Hollywood Bowl, but it's not that, because the Hollywood Bowl is like a open air kind of theater thing too, but it has like this big like concrete shell that looks like a bowl. And there's a lot of they do a lot of free performances out there, so the Hollywood Bowl is like this really interesting thing in LA, because you can go see like, hey, here's Green Day, they're doing a free performance, and it's just like you come to the Hollywood Bowl and show up. Because it's like built into like a mountain or whatever, so it's like basically there's no maintenance whatsoever. So that's why everything done there is like usually for free. Or the city paid for it, but there's just no admission or whatever. So, and it's LA, so it's only gonna work in your favor.
Yeah.
It's some benefit to clean the ocean or something. I don't know.
Something nebulous like that. Yeah.
That didn't work out. Now we have a continent of trash. Oh, they're cleaning that up now, so I don't know. Although I still, whatever people say, that there's a Texas-sized continent of trash out in the Pacific Ocean, and it's like, you mean it's like floating on top, or is this like a general mass thing? It's like there should be pictures and a guy with a flag. It's like, here's the continent, it's mine now. But that's not exactly what
is it. It's the size of Texas, but is it the depth of Texas? That's the real question. It's like, no, it's as big as Texas, and it's like 100 yards deep. It's like, that's a problem. But if it's just like floating on the surface, it's like, I don't know. Does anyone swim there? I mean,
well, I mean, that's the thing. Is like where it gathers, there are no islands, so it really only affects like the aquatic life around there. So yeah, it is eventually a problem, especially if you're fishing out there and stuff like that. But for land people, it's not really a problem because there's no land there. But it's also easiest for us to just like forget about it. It's like but still, like whenever you say a continent of trash, it's like I better see people living on that thing.
Yeah, I want to see like Antarctica. I want to see penguins like jumping. It's like, oh, okay.
Just polar bears with boxes on their heads.
Yeah, just having fun.
Syringes just dangling.
Yeah, that's a lot of mess. We know where most of that comes from, don't you?
Oh,
they always say like, yeah, there's this continent of trash and it's your fault, America. It's like, no, wait a minute, we landfill trash and collect it here. We don't dump it all into we used to.
Well, it's how all the waves work is like, it doesn't matter like where you put it, the trash will just end up there.
Mhm.
So it's everybody's fault, but it's mostly China.
Yeah. Well, do you know we have more landfills in the U.S. than China?
Huh.
Yeah,
Okay.
think about that for a minute. It's like there are 700 million more people than us. We have more dedicated space to. Now that could be a false fact. That could have changed. I don't
Yeah.
know, but
Well, you
when I
say
hear
that, and
stuff like
I'm
that,
also
it
thinking
doesn't.
about how like China's also overfishing. It's like, okay, you're just fishing where the trash is.
Yeah. Oh, it's like yeah, it's a 2 for 1. The fishing boats go out with a bunch of garbage and uh, just drop that off and start fishing. I mean, it
um,
wouldn't surprise me. There's shit
yeah,
that goes on in other countries. There's stuff that goes on in Europe that's weird. Did I ever tell you about my Irish trash hole on Reddit?
no.
Yeah, they took away like all. They wanted to reduce like the pickup and because in Ireland they don't have a lot of landfill places. They don't have like a big. They don't have any place where they can test nuclear bombs 1,500 at a time or anything. So they just like closed off a bunch of their public trash. Like it's just like and they started raising the rates for picking up garbage. And they're like, yeah, this will reduce waste. Like someone in the government thought that was a good idea. And what it's led to is just a country covered in trash. Because it's like, oh, it's 15 pounds if we put out an extra bag of garbage. Well, or euros or whatever they use now. And
Yeah.
it's like, well, I guess that's going into the river because I'm not paying for that. And like people will be drinking like outside and there's no place to put bottles. So they had a picture on Reddit of this trash can that was just full, overflowing. And someone made like a castle of bottles. Like it went up, like someone had to stand on someone's shoulders to put the ones on top. And it's like, this is amazing. And so now I always visit I'm sure Irish people are screaming at me now, like, that's not true. And it's like, well, that's what I've read on Reddit. That's my standard of excellence.
That's how your culture got to us through media, so that's what your culture is.
Yeah.
Now come to our schools where I can shoot you.
Yeah.
And eat a hamburger.
At the same time.
Yeah. um then a trolley drives off and it's called the Miracle Mile. I don't necessarily know like if that's a stretch in LA or something like that. Do you know what Miracle Mile necessarily refers to?
It's a stretch of commerce in Chicago off Michigan Avenue.
Huh, okay.
Um, and I think just like, well, you got to remember, like Los Angeles was one of those weird planned cities because it was, we had to conquer our way across the continent. So California was like one of the last places, like that was it. Then it's the ocean. And so when they built, I forget the guy's name who designed Los Angeles, but it's that wide open concept where the streets and the sidewalks are like, there's all kinds of shopping, but you can basically see from one end to the other of the city. That was
Yeah.
designed that way. And every city in America has copied that to a certain extent. This was before malls and stuff. This is when you had to go like into the city downtown to do stuff. And so that's like, there's a lot of miracle miles. So I assume this Los Angeles's version of it.
Okay.
But the one I know of is Michigan Avenue in Chicago. But
Okay.
I'm sure because Chicago was one of those cities that was like, burnt down and rebuilt a few times. So it's actually a lot more modern as cities go than what you think, even though it's in the middle of the country. But yeah, Los Angeles, that's that whole, when they do those amazing streetscapes in LA was just like natural, photographic, cinematic moment where you can see the streets go on forever. Yeah, those were intentionally designed that way.
I hear Arizona's like a big grid city. It's like everything's on a grid, but apparently it makes it boring rather than interesting.
Yeah, the city planning we do now is very they're actually working to change that. I even see that here where they try to put up like decorative bridges and they make the roads look interesting and have features to them, because the way we started in the 80s, like just build things, solve problems. And so we've created this really dehumanized landscape, and our cities, they're not inviting. Um, for the because either they're post-industrial hellholes or their place is so expensive, like the cops are following you around. Like, why are you here? Those are the two cities in America you have. Because I
Harry
remember
meets
they were trying to come up with a motto for Ipsy, and it's like, what should our city motto be or whatever? It's like, it's a hellhole rolled in sprinkles. 'Cause they're putting all these weird light projects up everywhere, and it's still like this massive poverty and violent crime in the city. It's like, yay, sprinkles on our hellhole. That suggestion somehow didn't work. No one bid on that one. I was disappointed. But
while watching this movie, I got like a advertisement for Cedar Rapids, and I thought I was brave that they had like a gay couple in the advertisement where it's like, "Come to Cedar Rapids, like we're rebuilding." It's like, I mean, Cedar Rapids is like more liberal compared to the rest of Iowa, but it's still Iowa.
yeah,
I'm not sure who you're trying to sell Cedar. If you're trying to sell Cedar Rapids to other Iowans, I'm not sure the gay couple's gonna like working for you.
yeah, you never know what that means to who. Because I know like city planners and people that went to nice colleges are like, this is a good image. I mean, people want to live here. It's like it's like there's all kinds of different people here, and look, they're smiling and everything, but
Yeah.
they don't realize like there's a whole dark side of this country that's like, I'd like to nuke that city. That's just another Sodom and Gomorrah right here in the middle of God's heartland. It's like they don't understand that those people like still exist.
Yeah.
They're prominent. I mean, they should, based on like who was president and stuff a couple years ago, but they don't seem to get it.
But I just thought it was weird. It was like that was advertising served to me because I live in Cedar Rapids. It's like, I'm here. You got me all right.
Yeah. Take my money. I'm here.
I remember I was like messing around with the VPN and stuff. I'd like put like I did like end up in like New York City, and like the advertising there is like amazing. Local, because it's like like those like local ambulance chaser like advertisements.
Oh,
like
yeah.
it's just kind of a guy kind of blankly staring at a camera, and there's like cheesy graphics. It's like, no, the ones in New York, it's like, it might as well be an episode of like Law and Order. Like, it's so well produced, and like the people are like well spoken and kind of have like a sense of like actor and like building themselves up.
Yeah.
It's like, oh wow,
here we just got like the flat, potato head guys like, I'm attorney Bill Simmons. Call me and I'll get you all the money you deserve for your toe jam / semi truck accident / mesothelioma. And they read it like it's 4 fucking words. But yeah, you go to New York and it's like, hey, this is Tony Pizzazzo. Wouldn't you like to live the good life? Well, I can sue the hell out of someone and get you that good life. And then he's like wearing a $5,000 suit, and he's got like, in a marble office. Here it's just a bunch of guys like, New York. It's like you can get your slice of the pie out in the Midwest. It's like, we know you're all gonna die of something soon, some corn-related illness. So get some money so your kids can shoot it into their veins. It's a whole different market.
Anyway, so Harry meets Julie's parents.
We're never going to talk about this damn movie.
It came out of nowhere. We weren't that excited for it. And I think the movie's good. It's just weird.
Yeah, it's the prototype for a quirky 90s movie.
Yeah. So he meets her parents, but it's like super awkward because apparently they're fighting. They haven't met each other in the 10 years. It's like, why are they surprised about what? It's just kind of a thing that just kind of they set up here, and it becomes a thing later on. So, Harry takes Julie to work. It's a Big Boy ripoff called Fat Boy.
Yeah, I like that because I thought, was this a Big Boy? Like, oh, no, Fat Boy.
And they kind of like kiss, and she tells him to like go home and take a nap, and he's like, why was I gonna do that? And she goes like, 3rd date, Harry, I'm gonna screw your eyes blue.
I did like that dialogue coming from her. It's like, oh, okay. These are big city people after all.
Straightforward. I like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, Harry goes home. He gets a smoke. He's like thinking of Julie. He takes a nap. Then a bird's nest knocks out the power to his building. They cut to the moonrise. Julie's all dressed up, waiting for Harry. They have this cool like clock where it's like spinning, and so like every time it spins, it like increases by like an hour or whatever.
Yeah.
And you see that he was supposed to pick her up at midnight, but she's like waiting around till like 3 o'clock, and then she leaves. And then Harry wakes up not knowing what time it actually is, but he's like flipping through the channels and he sees that it's like 3:45, and so he's like, it's like, oh no, and then he drives over to her work, but she's not there. He walks in, you hear a phone booth ringing, but he goes by it. He talks to the waitress on duty, and he gets like the scoop on Julie, like, hey, where's she live, and stuff like that. And it's like, wait, he doesn't know where she lives. Oh, okay. I guess there's a third date, so then he puts an order for like eggs and a euro, but he calls that a gyro.
Yeah.
I have something interesting about the waitress. I'm not sure if I wrote it here. Oh yeah, so this waitress is played by Olan Jones, who I was like, I swear I know her, and I swear I know she played another waitress, and she does. She's the waitress in like, I think it's the opening scene in Natural Born Killers, where she's kind of like curt with them before they start killing the patrons.
Okay.
I don't know if you remember her from that.
I think so.
Like he's getting pie or whatever, and she's kind of flirting with the Woody Harrelson character, and then like that's
yeah. Okay.
And then Denise Crosby shows in, who we all know as Landa. It's a weird name. We all know as what was her? Yeah, we know her from Next Generation, Star Trek Next Generation.
She was head chief of security on the Enterprise.
Tasha Yar.
Before she decided to like, I'm gonna be in Playboy, and and then they brought her back years later because it was okay to be in Playboy again.
Well, I think she also wanted to do like more, movies and stuff. Like she was worried about being typecasted and being like on a Star Trek convention circuit the rest of her life. And well, she pretty much guaranteed that anyway. So
yeah, I mean, that is money in the bank, even if you like think it's bad. It's like, well, once you get over 40, it's not a bad payday.
So she has like a suitcase with like a keyboard and a phone in it. It's like she never uses the keyboard, but it just sounds like that's weird.
Yeah, it's like an early concept of like, oh, this is what a modern like executive would have or something.
Well, they don't show a screen, so it's not like it's meant to be like a portable laptop or something. It's just a keyboard.
And the thing is, in 1988, they did have portable computers.
Yeah.
I mean, Dad had one. You could kill someone with it. It weighed like 50 pounds, and it wouldn't fit in a suitcase. That's for sure. You carried it more like think of a javelin missile or a javelin rocket. That's about the size. You had to carry it on your shoulder, but it was portable. And it had that weird, that luscious red screen.
That calming phosphorus glow.
Yes. Red chromatate number 7.
And then also along with that, she has a Cliff Notes version of Gravity's Rainbow.
Yeah, which she was speed reading.
Which I only vaguely know of it, but Nathan, explain what Gravity's Rainbow is.
I can. It's a Thomas Pynchon novel. It has to do with V2 rockets and where Slothrop has sex and how wherever he has sex, a V2 rocket will land. And a woman has sex with a horse and apologizes to the horse. There's a bunch of other stuff that happens. You just got to read it. It's weird. Some people think it's tough. I just think it's bizarre. It's like, oh, this is fun.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I got through a few chapters and it seemed like, and there's like blobs and a war going on, and it seemed like a bizarre like 50s like horror movie rather than like what was presented as like a grand catharsis of like like nuclear war or something like that. And I was like, this is just kind of like a dream like that this guy had.
Halfway through the book, it changes. It makes a hard right, and it becomes all those things you're talking about. It was supposed to be. It's almost like two different novels.
Okay.
Because if you want to learn a lot about the V2 rocket, read Gravity's Rainbow. You will learn a lot about. And that's that's the last Pynchon novel I ever sat down and read. I have others on, like, I know it's cheating to listen to them as audiobooks, but it's also a hell of a lot easier.
Yeah.
That's one of those guys that's like, oh, smart people read this guy, and I read it, and I'm like, yeah, I'm mildly amused, but this didn't change my life. It's like, well, you just didn't get it. You got to read it like 6 times. That's starting to sound like a cult.
Who did Infinite Jest?
Oh, that's the guy who did the guy who killed himself. Oh. I read.
Sorry, I always kind of think of Gravity's Rainbow and Infinite Jest in the same breath. It's like impenetrable things I'm never gonna finish.
Yeah, it's David Foster Wallace.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of. I mean, it's postmodernism. It's all that stuff is.
Okay.
And let me define that for you. No, I'm not. But it is. It's those are just considered like tough books. I consider a lot of them fun. Because I also read like Tom DeLillo, that's supposed to be like dense. And what was the one? White Noise.
Oh yeah.
The guy, the professor of Hitler studies at the university, and the cloud of death is coming to the town, and everyone's like, are we going to escape the cloud? What do our lives mean? And it was like, it's just so weird. It's just disjointed. It's people, like, if you can imagine, when I think of books like that and stories like that and people like that, it's like, oh, this is like if Mark Maron's personality fractured over 1,000 people. Like these kind of neurotic people that, like, I have all these ideas, and what does life mean? It's stuff that completely baffles me. Probably because I don't know. I don't have any like good moral compass or anything. It's just like, yeah, what's going on now? Oh, this is weird. But some people really like to analyze stuff, and I think it's funny. I like to read about neurosis and madness like that. It's like, this is cool. People actually waste their lives doing this. But maybe it's because I'm just like got a just an average IQ, and this is how I interpret the world. I don't know.
I played a game that was it was a spoof on a game called The Witness, which is kind of a game that's like really cool, but also like super up its own ass.
Okay.
And so this game, I think it's just called The Looker, and like you'll get like these, you'll find these audio logs, and it's just kind of like this guy, like it kind of seems like very serious, and it gets all all weird.
Games for people that like to think. Damn it.
Well, it's like, and I can't even remember what it is. It's like, I'm ruining it now, but anyway, it's like the game's free, so there's that too. The guy's like talking about like something serious is like, and this is the meaning of life. And then it goes into like, and come on down to Bob's like Bob's Chevy dealership where you can get 25% off like rust proofing.
But it's all said in a monotone, like none of this matters.
Well, it was monotone at first, but then when it becomes the car commercial, like
then it picks up tempo. And this is the hopelessness of our existence. But in this haze of nothingness, come on down to Bob's Chevy Emporium and pick you out a new pickup truck that will give your life meaning until the first payment's due.
There's like tougher than a drunk Marine on Saturday or something like that.
You gotta fight someone for a discount.
No, I think they're just saying how tough their truck was.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, so there's a joke in there that just mentions Gravity Rainbow, and I don't even know how close it is. And it's like, so imagine there's a rainbow, and you have like purple gravity and red gravity and blue gravity, and then you all come together and become superheroes because one of you can jump fast and one of you can one of you can jump far, one of you can go really fast, and the other one gives you huge cans. It's just
Sounds like
gravity's
shit out of Peacekeeper almost. What's this helmet do? It gives you scabies. You want a helmet that gives you scabies? Man has to think on his feet.
Sometimes a man needs a challenge.
Yeah, or something like that. Yeah, yeah.
So Harry goes outside, calls Julie.
Are we even into the first act yet?
Yeah, we're still in the first act.
Okay.
You know, we haven't done Greed Factory in a really long time. There's a lot of, you know, like, I got stuff to say.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff that could happen.
Harry calls Julie, leaves a message on her answer machine. He explains that, like, everything that went on, and then apologizes. He walks away, he buys a newspaper. Then the phone starts ringing on the phone booth. He picks it up, and there's some guy crying on the end. And he thinks he's talking to his dad. And he's talking about how, like, they're going to launch the whole wad. And he's, like, talking about nuclear missiles. And then he says, like, the Soviet response will, like, kick in 70 minutes. They're all going to be dead. And then you hear guards, like, come in the door, like, over the phone. And they kill Chip. That's what his name is. And then someone else picks up the phone and says, like, forget what you heard and go back to sleep. And so this is the plot of the movie. It's like, what just happened now that there's a nuclear threat all of a sudden? And that's the movie. So that's the end of Act 1. There's a nuclear threat all of a sudden. And he wasn't like, the guy was looking for his dad. He just called the wrong number. And now someone in LA knows that that America's about to start a nuclear war. And it doesn't get explained. You know, there's no explanation.
No, they don't go like it. They don't sit in the diner and just have like a long, you know, just drawn out discussion on game theory and first strike.
So Harry goes back.
Do what people really do, just freak out and do random stupid things because they read something in the Bible once, or, you know, whatever decisions people make.
Harry goes back into the bar or into the restaurant, and, like, he's distraught because, like, he's like, oh, maybe the world's ending. I just met the love of my life. And she's mad at him, so, you know, that's not good. He gets a nosebleed over his, like, eggs and meal or whatever. That's weird.
Yeah, that's a weird, like, bit of filmmaking.
Because it's gross, but he's still like
on the egg. Oh, no.
He still kind of he still eats it.
Yeah, he's got to eat. My end of the world meal is definitely going to be €1.
He takes the whole pot of coffee from the waitress and then dumps, like, milk in it. Which is kind of funny. I thought he was just going to just drink it straight from the coffee pot, but no, he does pour it in the cup. You know, so
it still has some ounce of humanity left.
And then he starts asking all the patrons if they have a son named Chip who works at a missile silo, and nobody reacts to him. There's a bunch of, like, interesting characters in here. Like, there's the guy who's, like, the therapist in the Terminator movies.
Yeah, it was fun to see him.
He's talking to a trans character. I think they're literally called transvestite in the credits. Although later on they said, like, hey, Bob, you coming with it? And they're like, nah. So this is before wokeness. So this is just, like, a guy who dresses up as a woman and having arguments with some, you know, business guy at a diner at 3 a.m.
Is transvestite an offensive term?
I
thought that meant a man who just dresses in woman's clothing, but otherwise doesn't identify.
Yeah, because
there's a lot of British comedians.
Yeah, Eddie Izzard's the one, like, I like associate like with that word, but that does have just a purely negative connotation. So I know people would probably take offense to it, but here that's the technical definition as I'm using is just a man wearing woman's clothing and makeup or whatever. So
yeah, I thought that was like a performance art thing. I didn't know.
Yeah.
I
mean, like, here we're in LA, like, they could be, you know, doing, you know, they could be in between some weird, you know, one-act play.
Yeah, because there's a show with a guy, and they call it the drag show or drag race.
Yeah, drag race. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah. See, I thought this was a drag character. I don't know.
Oh, it could be. Yeah, it could be a drag card. Yeah, totally. But like, I mean, what I'm saying, like in the credits, this character is literally listed as transvestite. So
Oh, okay. I didn't see the credits. So.
yeah, even though they do have a name later on, like I think they call him like Bobby or something like that.
Yeah.
But I didn't go back and look for that because I just watched this on Tube or Pluto. So
Oh, you too.
yeah.
Yeah, Tubi for me, but yeah.
So it had ads, so I can't just like, go back and find the spots without like watching 400 ads.
A lot of stuff we do, I watch on that because I can like make notes in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Oh, the commercial's on. Type.
Yeah, let's ignore the Yellowstone commercial. What commercials did you get? I got a bunch of Yellowstone commercials.
I don't remember. I was doing notes.
It did not work.
Got a thing.
The advertising failed.
I'm actually pretty attuned to like cutting that out
Yeah.
of my mind because that's like, well, if I got to put up with this, it's like I'm just like I'm in this other place now in my head, thinking about Gravity's Rainbow.
Landa gets on her cell phone. She's trying to confirm, like, hey, is that because she's like, I don't know, she's some kind of like Senate like aide or something like that. Like she knows people in high power, but so everyone starts freaking out when she can't confirm anything. It's like,
well, she calls like 5 people.
Yeah.
And then she gets off the phone at some point and says, 4 of the 5 people I've called are in transit to the southern hemisphere. Like a very weird statement like that. Like extreme southern hemisphere, which is Antarctica. Is like, okay. They go into McMurdo to stop the thing. What are they doing?
And then Robert Duquois, who plays Fred the cook, who most know the thing is like he's kind of like he's like I think he's like the not necessarily the station chief, but he's like at a window like handing out orders in RoboCop. He's in like all the RoboCop movies.
Yeah, I recognized him from that.
He pulls out a gun, shoots it, and then points it at Harry, demanding like whether he's telling the truth or not, or if he's just lying. He says, "I'll tell you what you want, man, but like that's the truth as far as I know it." And then Landa asks Harry to like recount the phone call exactly, and then you get like the phrase Thor Arthur's 66 DDZ, and then she's kind of like, that doesn't necessarily like trigger anything for her, but she's like, I think that's something like, all right. Then she
that sounds like the jargon.
Fred goes in the back. He grabs like a shopping cart full of food and he wheels it out. They have a big van, or what kind of van is that? Like a panel van, or what do you call that kind of van?
Yeah, that's like an old school like reefer panel
box
type
truck. Yeah.
It looks like it's made to transport food or something.
Yeah,
like what a punter would have in the 80s, like those kind of vans.
So all the eccentric patrons like file into the van with all the food and stuff like that. And then Landa's making plans to like go to Antarctica, but she has to like first they have to get to a helipad on top of some sort of tall building. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like the Mutual Trust building or something. It has a name. It's a made up name, but yeah.
And then they're gonna fly the helicopter to the airport and then take a plane to Antarctica. Like that's her plan. And I'm like, no, this logistics gonna work out in the next hour.
Yeah, that's no matter how much money you have to throw around, because you're gonna have to refuel that thing, and but it's just like there's a lot of things in this movie just to establish motives for different people, and then it's like that's completely impractical. But
yeah, but it's like her stuff is the most official. Like everyone else is panicking and trying something because like in this moment it's like so much is out of your hands. It's like, well, I could do nothing or I could do something. And it doesn't matter either way, but if you're doing something and you have stuff, something might work out in your favor. Harry's car gets stolen just randomly. I don't think we see who takes off with it, but somebody does.
Yeah.
So he hops in the box truck. there's the flight attendant who was in there who like she's not an actual flight attendant. She just has an outfit from her sister, and she's a very weird person.
Yeah, I thought she was like she looks like a Russian or something.
Yeah,
One of those Russian flight attendants from the '60s.
And Landa's trying to get a pilot on the phone. Harry takes Fred's gun and like he's trying to hold it to his head to get him to stop so he can go get Julie, but he doesn't. But they tells him like, "Hey man, we're coming up on the on ramp. I'm gonna be slowing down. You can jump off there."
Yeah, that always works out well.
So he
I like
does
in this movie, like ostensibly the main character has never handled guns before, but like in a lot of movies of this era and type, to make his point, he's cocking the hammer back on the revolver.
Yeah.
Which means it could go off very easily,
Yeah.
very quickly. He's in a vehicle that's moving around like this. That's not a good time to cock the hammer, but it does make the point cinematic.
Yeah. Well, then he just tosses the gun on the road. So, which I'm not sure if would be safer. It's like, all right, if this thing goes off and hits the ground, at least it'll hit the ground slightly away from me.
Right.
Rather than it going off while I'm holding it. So.
In my hand as I jump.
Which again, you can like, decock it or,
put it in your pocket.
Take
well,
the
then you
bullets
land
out.
on it and break a rib.
Oh, I fell in my wallet jumping on the on-ramp.
Yeah, jumping out of a moving car at even low speeds into grass is a lot more dangerous than you think. Jumping out of a vehicle onto concrete at an incline is even worse. But,
Oh, yeah, he passes out. He wakes up when motorcycles like kind of split around him, going around him. His glasses break too, but that doesn't really seem to be a problem. But like I'm sitting there, it's like, oh, he's fucked. He's like, so many things aren't gonna go well because he doesn't have glasses. But that's not really. They don't really focus on that. It's just like now he doesn't.
He just
have
needs him to read music, I
Yeah.
guess.
So now he has to go get Julie. He fires the gun to make sure he isn't dreaming, but he isn't dreaming. So
I do that a lot too. Shoot a gun off.
So he ends up hijacking a car at gunpoint, and then like the guy like pulls over, and then his trunk opens up, and he sees like, oh, he's stealing car stereos. Later on I'll get to it here, but like I said, I was like, oh, I swear I know this guy. I was like, am I racist or is this Bubba from Forrest Gump? And at first when I looked it up, I was like, I didn't find his name. Like he's like really low down the cast list here for some reason for being like a main character.
Yeah, that's kind of weird.
And then I went to Forrest Gump where he's even lower on the cast list and also like a very like central character to that movie. So, I don't know. This guy's agent must suck or something.
Yeah.
Because he has a different name here, so I thought he's listed as. So when I went to Forrest Gump to click on the actor's name, which is McKelty Williamson, so when I clicked on that from Forrest Gump, I looked at 1989. This movie doesn't show up because he's listed technically as a different name here.
Huh.
So I thought I was just being racist, but no, this is Bubba from Forrest Gump. So he plays Wilson. So yeah, so he forces him to. It's like, hey, do you got enough gas to like go here and go back? He's like, no. So they stop at some gas station, which I never heard of this before because, I mean, I guess I've seen some stuff like this where it's just a dedicated gas station. It's not like anybody can get gas there.
It's a livery gas station. It's for
okay.
Delivery vehicles and taxis.
Oh, okay. I've never seen that before. So
yeah, because they'll buy the gas in like blocks.
Yeah.
And send it to these stations so they can get it for a different price, or it's not taxed because it's like part of their job. There's all kinds of different reasons to have those.
Oh, okay. So they stop at the cabbie station, and Harry goes and makes a phone call. And we have Edward Bunker shows up. He pulls a shotgun on Wilson as he's like jiggling the locked pump. Edward Bunker, I don't know, he was like Mr. No, he's like, I can't remember who he was. He was like Mr. Blue in Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah,
Um,
I recognize them.
or if you saw, he was in Runaway Train where he plays a convict who would like get on a
Okay.
runaway train. Because he was like literally he was a convict, like he was in prison for like
Oh,
15 years
okay.
or
So that's
something
why
like
this guy plays these roles so well.
that. uh, then the cops show up and they arrest the guy pulling the gun, pulling the shotgun on the black guy. So at least they did that. But then everything gets crazy because I forget how it happens. I think that he says like he's got stolen stuff in his trunk, and then they point guns at him, and then the gas pump gets undone, and he ends up like spraying the cops with gas, and then of course the cops in a panic fire their guns and light themselves on fire. It's a very weird scene, but yeah,
That's a weird, horrifying scene.
yeah,
You see cops just burn alive, and they're screaming the whole time.
yeah. And Edward gets shot or something. I can't remember what happens. I think he dies or something. And they run away, and they basically. I don't think it's a practical because it looks very weird. It looks like they just like basically a nuclear explosion goes off at the gas station.
Yeah, that was something added in post production because the Jeep that's driving the other way doesn't even no brake lights, nothing. I was like, oh, these people are just either have very poor attention span or that was just put in much later.
But yeah, all the cars go. So, but yeah, this time they're driving away in the cop car.
Yeah,
so,
put the lights on.
Yeah. Yeah, which he gets on. He gets on the like the radio and he's trying to talk to the cops, and this is where he ends up telling Wilson that like, yeah, I worked at a nuclear power plant. There's a cloud coming, and so he doesn't tell them that like the world's gonna end. He just kind of gives them a vaguely associated nuclear disaster that seems like less threatening than the world ending.
Yeah.
But then Wilson's like concerned about. I think it's his sister, right? That he's like, I gotta go get her. Like, the cloud's coming. So they make it over to the La Brea Estates, which is where Julie and her whole family live in separate apartments or something.
Yeah, some weird arrangement like that. I quite understand that. But it's like, why is her mom like pointing a gun around?
Yeah, Harry goes in looking for Ivan, which is the dad, and Julie, because he called Ivan from the gas station. But Harry, he goes he finds Julie, but before that, he has like he sees her mom and she holds him up with a gun for a moment, and then I forget there's a thing where she's like takes the gun off him and then points it back at him for some reason.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, because she seems to be having like her mom seems to be in some kind of mental state all the time. Like she's reacting to things that aren't there or doing something. I'm not sure.
But then he goes and finds Julie, but he tries to wake her up, but she's like completely knocked out. Apparently they gave her like a
Valium.
Valium, okay. And then, but Wilson takes off in the cop car because he can't wait for them any longer. So Harry, a sleeping Julie, and her mom, Lucy, go to the garage for a car that might work.
Yeah, it's a very old car.
And then Lucy and Ivan cross paths, and they like hug and seemingly forgive themselves for whatever their misgivings were. Then Lucy and Ivan go to get the car. But then Harry just like puts Julie in a shopping cart and is like running over to like the helicopter pad. I was like, wait, why aren't you waiting for the car? I was like, oh,
well, because as I remember, the parents like stopped and talked to him once they got in the car.
Yeah, they did,
like, but they don't. Yeah, kind of the scene kind of comes together weird.
Yeah. I mean, like to me, it doesn't necessarily make sense. It's like, wouldn't you wait in the car? Like, I know the thing is like they don't know if the car works. But it's like, why are you running over there and then meeting up with each other with a car and then you're taking off of the car anyways? But, you can excuse it because here in this situation is like nobody's in the right mind or thinking straight. People are just reacting.
Yeah.
So that's fine. So Julie wakes up and then they start to get in a run, and she has no idea what's going on. And he didn't tell her anything, so she thinks she thinks he's like on some kind of weird apology date or something like that.
Yeah.
So they make it to the building, and Lucy and Iva show up in their car, which makes Julie happy. He's like, "Oh, my parents are back together," but then they kind of like to her mysteriously take off and leave. It's like, "Hey, I want to go with you."
No, they're fine. We gotta go.
Oh, and they show like a little bit where like they she like overgasses the car while it's in park or something like that, and they start yelling at each other, and they're like, "Oh, we shouldn't fight." It's like, oh, that was their misgiving, just for general marriage stuff.
Yeah, just being married for 50 years.
So yeah, they make their way up into the building, and then a couple of ladies with like guns show up in their wake, which I don't know. They're interesting characters for what they seem to be like, kind of like, 80s pop stars with Uzis, but like that's all their characters are. They don't exist to the rest of the movie. But I was like, wait, who are these people? They just know Landa, so it's just
yeah, they're people weird, associates of hers.
Yeah, the weird
people.
Because
they're talking about, did you bring the hollow points? And they have weird conversations like that.
But Harry and Julie get to the rooftop. There's guys up there like prepping the helicopter, but there's no pilot. Here we have Kurt Fuller as Gerstad. Kurt Fuller is just a consummate like douchebag character actor. He's been in everything.
Always plays the same character.
Yeah, pretty much. He's just like, oh, I hate that guy. It's like, yep, that's what he does. He's working for Landa, but he's like pissed that he's having to do like this night work, and he doesn't think the world's ending. So then Harry leaves Julie on the roof so he can go find a helicopter pilot. So he runs down a street sweeper, but ends up being like one of the guys from the diner from earlier, and he just flips him off and runs away. There's a lot of street sweeper stuff in this movie, and I don't know if that ultimately meant anything, but I was like, oh, is this gonna have some special meaning? It's like, nah. Because there's like the one part where there's like a couple of street sweepers going on, which might have just been those guys from the diner. They might have just both been street sweepers, but they were like swerving around like homeless people and stuff like that. So I was like, oh, does this have some double meaning or something? It's like, nah, it's just LA. So
yeah, it's a bunch of weirdos.
Harry ends up at a gym looking for a pilot. He shoots the gun off and he like scares an aerobics class. But then like while leaving that aerobics class, he finds like a pilot who's just like pumping weights. I don't think I wrote down this guy, but this guy is like, he just plays an evil like henchman in a bunch of things. I think he might be like the main bad guy in like Cobra.
Brian Thompson.
Yeah. And the pilot's like, I have to get Leslie first. We can't go without them. And like, and then I think Leslie's a guy. So, because there's a moment there's like where he's like, do you have a problem with this? He's like, no.
I just need a pilot.
I don't care if you're gay.
Brian Thompson was one of the thugs with Bill Paxton that was antagonizing the Terminator in the original Terminator. That was his first role. I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, he's a guy. He has a very like square, pronounced jaw, and he's just a large man, or at least he projects being a large man. So
yeah.
So they're heading out, but like as they're kind of going back to the building, he hears Julie like off in the distance, who's also trying to find a pilot, because she basically just learns that like, oh, the world's ending. Then she's like, well, I better jump into action too.
Yeah.
And she's also groggy and coming off of a sedative sleep, so that's but then Wilson shows up and he crashes the cop car like through a mall. He's carrying his shot up and dying sister around. The cops show up and like surround the place. His sister dies in his arms. very much like the way he dies in Forrest's arms.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
And then Wilson asks Harry to kill him, and then he just dies anyways. So that's weird.
Saves Harry the trouble, the moral conundrum.
Yeah. And then Harry and Julia kind of go off into a different room as you hear like the cops say like, "Come out with your hands up and your weapon, put your weapons down." And then here Harry is like overcome with grief. Julie's like caught up on everything.
Yeah.
Well, I think Wilson said something like it's been over an hour. So here he's thinking, "Oh, did I cause all this for nothing? Like, is there not a nuclear attack?" So I think this is like his whole catharsis that like everything that happened just now where people got hurt and killed is now his fault. That's what he thinks.
Oh, okay. So he just says, he's like, "Am I the boy who cried wolf or not?"
Yeah, because he says something like later on. He says like, "Am I Chicken Little?" or something like that.
That's actually a better example because the boy who cried wolf was doing it for a purpose. Chicken Little just misinterpreted that the sky was falling.
Okay. So that being the end of Act 2. So we have Act 3, where we have Harry and Julia go out to surrender to the cops, but the cops pack up and leave without explanation.
It's funny, like a SWAT guy rappels down on a rope.
Yeah.
Right next to him and just takes off running.
Well, first he like clumsily falls to the ground and then takes off running.
I wondered if that was like, did they mean for that to happen? Or did it was like, hey, he's in a panic. It
it works either way. Once you get either way, it'll work, and we got the shot, and we don't have to do a take 2. So, which is the good thing when you make a weird movie like this. It's kind of like anything is valid.
Yeah, it can all make. This is a strange movie.
It's dawn. You see like the panic like starting to build in the streets as like people start to wake up and like the fears in the air. They end up back at
I just thought this was every morning in Los Angeles.
yeah, maybe.
I'm gonna sit in the car for 5 hours to go do a job I hate.
But yeah, like the kind of the empty LA streets, or as they're starting to fill during like as the sun rises, like it's very cool looking. I mean, that's why you shoot at those hours where it's like just before the sun hit, it's the magic hour where it's like the light just before like you get direct sunlight. So it's kind of like the aura of the sun. So that's, usually you shoot that at sun. I mean, they probably shot this. They probably had some horrific schedule. It's like, all right, we got to shoot a dawn and what's the other way? a dusk or a dawn, like shooting schedule just to get these shots.
And this whole movie, by the way, was shot in LA exclusively.
Yeah,
which was kind of actually cool. It's one of the things I like about this because that's a place I'm not familiar with. I've never been, but I've seen it a lot.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, there's LA. I mean, there's a lot of shit shot in LA, and the great thing about shooting in LA is that that's where everybody lives. So when you're done shooting for the day, you just go home.
Yeah.
So there is a way, like you shoot a movie in LA, you kind of get like better tempered crews and stuff like that, and you can get great stuff. The problem with shooting in LA is that so much shit is shot in LA, it's hard to make it look different.
Yeah.
But, even Blade Runner had some stuff shot in LA. So.
Oh yeah.
I think so, or at least it's based on one of their weird.
No, that was actually shot there.
Hotel.
It just doesn't look anything like that.
Oh, was the whole movie shot there? Okay.
Yeah.
I thought that was one of those like they shot it in that one, was it the Bradbury building? Or whatever?
Yeah, I mean that Bradbury building's real, and they did shoot it there, I believe. But
okay,
it doesn't, the way it looks in the movie. In real life, it just kind of looks like an older building. It's like they really made it, but you could tell it was the same building, but it's like they really changed it.
Yeah. They end up back at the Fat Boys Diner, so that really kind of like completes the loop that like everywhere they've been so far like really isn't that far apart from each other. So it's just which you don't really get that spatial relation in the beginning of the movie, but now it makes more sense. Like, why would he shove her in a park in a shopping cart to run her to this building? Like, aren't these buildings a mile apart? And it's like, no, they're not really. So, Um, and so Harry ends up calling up Chip's dad on the phone, and he basically gets his dad to like confirm that like, oh, Chip's real, and he does work at a missile silo in North Dakota, so all that's real. It's like you're all gonna die.
Yeah.
So Julie and Harry make their way back to helipad, but Harry and Julie split up. He gives her the gun. He's got to go get the helicopter pilot. He sees a guy in a tracksuit. It's like, oh, there he is. And then why it's not the helicopter pilot, but then people start gathering around a storefront of TV and watching a newscast, which is a very like 80s thing. You don't see this anymore, but it's like
No,
every
nobody
movie from the
does
80s and 90s, there was like a storefront window with just TVs in it, and this is where you get your information for your movie from. So they start seeing a bunch of newscasts, like people are going crazy. They're shooting the newscasters and stuff like that. The emergency sirens start blaring. The streets are suddenly in gridlock. There's cars crashing over the place. He ends up like on top of a roof of some guy's car, and then the guy just starts chasing him like with a gun. And he's like worms his way down to the sewers, and the guy's like too fat to fit through the sewers, but he's still like shooting his gun through the sewer grates.
Yeah.
He makes it back to the heliport building. He finds Julie, and they make their way up the elevator. But then like the elevator stops, and they're like bathed in like red glow. Very effective looking shot. It's like, okay, well, this is doom, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then she says something like, people are gonna help each other, right? I mean, the survivors. And he just goes, I think it's the insects churn.
Yeah. That was a good bit of dialogue.
Yeah, it's not reassuring, but it's fun. Oh wait, no, that's a bit before. No, so they're just on the elevator at first, then the power goes out. So he says that before the power goes out, that they're bathed in the emergency lights. They're just waiting to be blown up. They're like confessing their love to each other. They like start having sex, but then the elevator like starts working again and makes its way to the roof. And then they see Gerstad. He's just like drugged out of his mind. The roof doesn't have a helicopter. All its stuff is empty. And then they see a rocket like fly off in the distance, and they're like, "Oh, well, it's all real." But then the helicopter shows up. It lands on the roof. Harry and Julie hop in, and they take off. You see missiles like streak towards LA, and they blow up. Gerstad just like gets killed immediately. Somehow the helicopter's okay for a bit, but then the controls are disabled, but the helicopter's still operable even in the shockwave of a nuclear blast.
Well, they were behind the building, so that's
yeah, I guess, yeah. So there's more explosions. They crash into the tar pits, and then the helicopter's just sinking in the tar pits, and Harry and Julie are the last people alive.
Oh, and remember the helicopter pilot was shot up and bleeding out of the mouth too.
Yeah.
When he landed, so something else happened somewhere.
Yeah, he got shrapnel from the building windows exploding probably got into him. So
no, he was shot up when he landed.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah,
which was a weird detail that was never like explained.
Yeah, it's not explained.
There's a lot of things in this movie. It's just, that just
happened. They try to like console themselves where it's like, hey, our atoms are gonna end up as diamonds.
Yeah.
That's the only hope they give themselves. They're not like, we're gonna live through this. Like, nope. But maybe it'll be diamonds in the future, not with conscious or anything, but our atoms will be contributing to something that's cool looking. And then the world blows up, and that's the end of the movie.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons this script floated around for 10 years is no one liked the ending.
Yeah.
It's like they wanted him to escape. It's like, escape into what? I mean, unless like only Los Angeles was getting hit for some reason, some weird exchange with the Soviets where, well, you destroy one of our big cities and we destroy LA, which is really the largest city in America in terms of people, just spread out over a huge area. And it's like, well, yeah, what city do they have that has like 25 million people in it? But yeah. And also La Brea tar pit's about 4 inches deep. So You were not going to leave a
Oh,
helicopter in them. So,
okay. I
unfortunately,
didn't know that. Well,
it doesn't
I,
matter.
well, when I saw that, like the only thing I was concerned about was like, isn't that like really hot? Shouldn't they be scalding and burning? Because I actually have no idea. So,
It's about 109 degrees.
eh,
The La Brea tar pits, because it was something else. It's like, God, this cool, weird Los Angeles thing, are mostly what you call heavy viscous oil. They're not really like asphalt tar, like you're thinking you put on a roof or a road. So it's more like oil kind of heated by a hot spring underneath.
yeah.
It's not like just a pit of burning tar where you're killed like the guy in Fargo season 2. It's not like that.
Hmm.
Again, I've never been there. I've just read about it.
Yeah.
But they put like mastodon cement mastodons and stuff in it to make it look like it's like, oh, they came here and sunk into the tar and died. And it's like, well, not unless they were under 4 inches tall, but it's more dramatic that way.
See, I've only been in LA to fly out of its airport, so I didn't get to see LA. I got to see the really,
LAX.
yeah,
Fly out of John Wayne.
LAX.
Okay.
Usually when we end up flying out of California, would go to the Ontario airport. Um, but the LA, what do they call that? The hell's that called? Yeah, the LA USO.
Okay.
It's a cool place because it has like all this like shrine to like Hollywood people that were in the that served in the military and stuff like that, and it's huge, and there's all this stuff that gets donated there. So it's just like video games and movies and candy all over the place.
Oh, cool.
The Ontario USO is also cool, but it's like weird because it's not anywhere near the airport. It's like a 15-minute drive to like just this big building like near the airport.
Yeah, I forget how many airports they have in that whole area, but it's a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, Chicago has like 2, so.
Yeah.
And I
And
think
so
New
does
York
New York has two. Oh. Well, they got JFK and LaGuardia.
And I thought there was one in. I thought you could fly into Newark. That's more.
Yeah, Newark's one, but that's New Jersey.
I think in the LA. And when you say LA, you're talking about a bunch of different cities that have just grown together. Because Los Angeles itself is not like, I forget how many people live. It's not even as big as New York. But when you include everything that grew out flat from it, it's like twice the size of New York.
Yeah.
Because what did Tom Cruise say in Collateral? 25 million strangers.
Yeah.
It's like, this is a very spread out city. But yeah.
But yeah, Miracle Mile.
Huh?
Miracle Mile. You can find it for free in a lot of places. A very interesting movie. You've never seen it. It's a downer, but it's a very weird movie. So
yeah, it's again, it feels bigger than it is.
Yeah.
It's more oppressive as it goes on, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Because it does have a clock running. It's not like this isn't like 24, but it's more nebulous than that. But it's like, because you're always thinking like, well, how are they going to get out of this? How can they possibly? They basically accomplished moving around in a 10 square mile area.
Yeah.
And they have to get to Antarctica. How is this going to work? It's like, oh, it's not.
Yeah.
Not until the very end do you. Oh, it's like, oh, it's not going to work.
Yeah, because even when they get in the helicopter and you see the rockets flying, it's like you still got to get to the airport.
Yeah.
But once you see the rocket streaks, it's like, well, it's over.
Yeah, so that's where this movie is effective, and the tension is immediate, and it just seems like a bunch of random people really late at night in a huge city. It's like, it kind of makes a certain sense.
These are the night people. It's all because like you got a lot of good performances because it's all kind of like a lot of weird, quirky, like character actors and stuff.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, that's all it is. I didn't know Denise Crosby was Bing Crosby's niece.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Found that out in the research.
Doesn't he have? Doesn't he have like 50 kids or something weird like? Or no, I think I forget that. Or was it like Melissa Etheridge and her wife like got his sperm to have a baby or something like that?
No, that's a different Crosby.
Oh wait, yeah, that's the
Crosby from the Grateful Dead.
okay. Now I'm thinking. I get my Crosbys mixed up. You know the
No, I'm
pudding
sorry.
pops.
Denise Crosby was his granddaughter.
Huh. Okay.
Now, Bing Crosby had
Was he a singer?
6 kids. Yeah.
Okay. 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 I got that right.
He was a crooner. He did like White Christmas and
yeah. Yeah. Okay.
stuff like that. So, yeah, that was interesting. But yeah, this movie works. Another interesting thing about this movie is let me get the thing back up. Where is it? Damn it, my notes. Anthony Edwards and Mare Winningham married recently.
Huh. That's
2021.
Weird. Huh. That is weird.
Yeah, they both got divorced from other people and married each other, which explains it's like because there does seem to be a chemistry between them in the movie.
Yeah.
And then you read that and it's like, oh, okay.
They found each other before the world ended.
Yeah, they did. They actually did in real life. I like some of the more pretentious modern reviewings of this movie. It's like, this is a movie of our time right now. It's like, no, it isn't. What are you talking about? Because it's a character study of a small, it's like a 24-hour film festival movie. It's not like, it's like, oh, the geopolitics. It's like Donald Trump launched the missiles. It's like, no, it's not that. You want to make it into that, but it's not that. It's a movie of its time. But I do think it was a template for a lot of quirky movies in the 90s with like the kind of weird characters. I'm trying to think of which 90s movie. Well, it's a lot of stuff in the 90s seemed to like, let's put a bunch of eccentric characters together and have dialogue.
Yeah, I mean, Clerks is that essentially, but
I was thinking of more, I forget. I had some stuff, but
like Reality Bites
and sci-fi type movies where people seem to be acting or reacting to it in kind of a sardonic or indifferent manner, or they're very scared but they're going to do very stupid things. And because I thought this was a 90s movie before I looked it up.
I mean, it's 89. It's close, so
yeah, but it's still, there's a lot of 80s movie stuff in it once you watch it.
This, The Abyss, Batman.
Yeah, so it was.
Yeah, what else came in? 80, I remember 80. I'm always surprised when a movie is like, oh, that came out in 1989, so let's look up the 1989 movie list. So I know Batman is there because that's the biggest movie of that year. We got Always.
Fat Man and Little Boy.
You got Star Trek V, The Final Frontier.
That was a classic.
And Warlock, Leviathan.
Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Deep Star 6 and Leviathan the same years.
Yeah.
Back to the Future 2. Wizard.
Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade made more money than Batman.
Huh. Okay.
I would not have guessed that.
Huh.
It made like $60 million more.
Huh.
Dead Poets Society.
Yeah, I want to think The Wizard was I thought that was a 90s movie. That's the video game where the kids like take the autistic kid out and there's like Super Mario 3s in it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Huh. Yeah. Roadhouse is 89.
Yes. The Adventures of Baron Munchausen came out in 89.
Uncle Buck was 89.
Yeah, I can see that.
Cyborg. 89. Weekend at Bernie's 89. That makes more sense to me. That's kind of that's on the edge. K9, another.
Major League.
Was that 89?
Yeah.
Huh.
This
UHF?
was like October. No, this is April, June.
UHF? License to Kill. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Is 89. Huh. Yeah, I guess so many of these movies were like just
Field of
on.
Dreams. Holy shit.
Huh. Okay.
Boy, they made a much better movies back then than we get now.
Well, I think a lot of these movies we're just mentioning were like on repeat on cable, so they probably like we probably saw them in the 90s and didn't realize they were like movies from the 89.
That could be.
So I think like Batman was like our well, I think it wasn't the first, but I remember it was one of the first VHSs our family had. So
yeah, well, everyone had one of those.
yeah.
It was Batman VHS. They were ubiquitous. I think they made 1 billion of those.
Yeah, well, I was also like, because I don't remember this time, but people told me, or I've read about it, but like VHSs used to cost like $90. Because the idea was like, well, you could show this to anybody. So basically they wanted you to basically buy a licensing fee for like having home video.
Okay.
And then when like Blockbusters and stuff came around, then that all changed, and then VHSs became like $12, and then that was more manageable, and then that took off.
Yeah.
But yeah, But I remember like the '89 Batman was like one of the that was one of the first like huge home video. Well, it wasn't the first, but that was like one of the biggest VHSs of all time. So
that's one everyone would want to have and watch again and again.
Yeah,
because there was cool stuff in it.
I always remember the
imagine
ET.
oh, go ahead.
I always remember the ET VHS because it had the green strip on it.
Oh yeah.
You know what? We had that on video. That movie was played all the time on cable. I've seen bits and pieces of it. I have never watched that front to back.
Oh, several times. It was a big movie when I was like 10 or whatever.
So all ET is to me is just a bunch of scattershot moments. And then like I remember the end where it's like ET leaves, but then I remember ET dying some point. I was like, wait, how does this movie work?
ET is Jesus. He rises from the dead to bring the prophecy of the penis aliens. I remember somebody said ET was basically a dick. It's just like that's all, because if you look at his like body,
yeah,
it's just like his lower body is a scrotum, and then his neck gets really long when something bites him. But it's like ET is just a penis. That's ruined ET for me forever. It's like, oh,
no, I can never eat Reese's Pieces ever again.
Yeah. Somebody else made that up, not me. I'm not taking credit for that. But they what was I going to say about? Oh yeah, just think about the complexity of media back then. Like a VHS cassette, which had film in it, springs, coils that had the wind, compared to a DVD.
Yeah.
And then compare that to now, where there's like no physical media. It's just on some kind of drive somewhere. It's like the industry it took to make all those VHS. Like someone had to make those.
Yeah.
There were human hands involved, whether it's just packaging. At some point, there was all this stuff. Now it's like nothing. It's just data floating around somewhere. They don't even think about it.
Yeah.
It's like you had to have a TV, like 4 weird cables that were multicolored, a VCR, and then a cassette. And now you can just stare at your phone. Like, I know like guys like David Lynch say that's bad, and maybe for his movies it would be. I wouldn't watch a David Lynch movie on a phone. Those are made for larger screens, but it's like, yeah, TV shows and stuff, sure, who cares? There's no production value to it. It's an exceptional TV show, but yeah, it's just sometimes when I think about like, oh, how media has, and I mean media, physical media has changed so much. And it's why no one has a job anymore either. Because even the DVDs, like someone had to, set up machinery to make that. So, and the amount of energy and effort that went into making all those cassettes is amazing. And look at video games. I mean, they these big cartridges stuff in them, and they haven't made
Although,
games like that in 20 years.
although with games, it's weirder because like with the media we're talking about, like they have like a master that they can port all this stuff to very easily. You don't need a machine. It's like I mean, you have machines to play it, but like they're just all over the place in different. Whereas with video games, it's like, well, this one machine plays it.
Yeah.
And weirdly, like Americans like have much more of a sense of like when it comes to like conserving like the history of video games, like American business are like, one, it's like, well, at some point we can always sell this, so they're just more concerned about like keeping like kind of maintaining it. Whereas like in other countries, like in Japan, like some video games are just lost forever because nobody was concerned about like, hey, maybe someday we can sell this again. They just like, it's done.
On to the new thing.
And even though you have like a game where it's like, okay, here's the game we're talking about, like they don't have the source code anymore, but like you reverse engineer it from the cartridges somehow. I don't understand why, but it's like just nearly impossible to just reverse engineer it from the. I was like, well, isn't the code on the game? Like, how does this thing? Like, I don't know how it works, but yeah, it's a weird thing.
You're talking like a cart media protocols versus just pure digital stuff.
Well, no, it's like it's how like the source code is like everything where it's like the source code, the code on the video game itself. It's like it's different from like where it was the computer that like printed it onto the cartridge, which means the code's all there, but it's not organized in the same fashion. So you can't just reverse engineer it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you can't just hook a bunch of alligator clips with wires up to the, corresponding terminals and play Super Mario 3. It doesn't. Yeah. I thought there was some kind of protocol with how it assembled the data that just doesn't exist anymore because you would never do anything that inefficient.
Oh, that too. But yeah, there's a lot of emulator stuff now that, big emulator stuff. Like some people are finding ways to recover that because I know there's a big problem with emulators in the Sega Saturn. Because when the Sega Saturn was created, they thought that they were going to be making hey, we're going to make really awesome 2D video games. And then 3D, and then the PlayStation came out, and then it's like, oh, no, everyone's in the 3D now. And so then they had to force the Sega Saturn to be a 3D video game, and they did the weirdest shit where it's like, oh, the fucking sound card is handling some of the 3D graphics because they had to get power from somewhere.
Yeah, good luck recreating that.
Yes, emulating that is a fucking nightmare. So
it's just interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, have you ever seen a record? Have you ever seen how those are made?
I think so, but go ahead and explain it.
Oh, the grooves. You ever seen a record under a microscope, like a scanning electron microscope? Well, first of all, you think you're in the world of Tron. What the hell is it? Because it's just a bunch of groove patterns, and when you blow them up on a microscope, they look like valleys and mountains.
Yeah.
And like this creates this tone, this vibrates against the diamond or the reader head and the tone arm and does this and that. And it's all super simplistic, but all at a microscopic level, it looks like vastly complex. Yeah. Because it is a purely analog mechanical way of reproducing sound.
Yeah.
There's not even like even a tape cassette or an 8-track cassette is like, it's not even the same thing. It's totally different. It's magnetically stored media, whereas a record is a physical embodiment with a device that decodes it into Dark Side of the Moon. But all it is vibrations and pitches that are ran through speakers and stuff and amplifiers and it works. But to make the record is basically like they cut a master, which literally means those grooves and lands were cut in it. And then they make a negative die, and then they press out the record vinyl, and it has all those grooves and stuff in it. And they're just chunking them out, and it's like that is an insanely complex way to do things, but it is a joke compared to like a MP3 player.
Yeah,
it's purely a digital. There's no physical. It's only telling speakers, look, sound like this, and it recreate. I don't know how you I don't know how sound goes from physical to digital, but whatever it does, it's like it's way more complex, but also much less daunting because it's like we just accept that technology. But when you really start looking into like analog sound reproductions, like this was insane. This reel-to-reel recorder has a transmission in it. It has 9 different forward. Like that's nuts. um, and it's like some of those you could only plug it into one socket depending on what country you're in, because the amount of power it would draw could blow fuses and shit. I'm talking about I'm talking about like a double reel-to-reel recorder, a real high fidelity one.
Yeah.
It's like it had so many different modes of play and recording, like you couldn't plug other things into that outlet with it. Now you can charge like 15 phones off one outlet because there's almost no energy being used, or it's very small. It's like amplifiers, sound amplification equipment from the 30s and 40s and 50s will kill you. If you will just stop your heart. You will touch something and like your skin will burn off. Nowadays, it's all just done. You're just raising, sound levels through just modulation, essentially. But back then, it's like, oh, that was physical stuff. It was dangerous. It was. I mean, you have capacitors now and resistors and things like that, but they're all like you have to find them under a microscope. They're more like gates for data than they are actual like chunk chunk chunk.
Yeah.
This turns power on, this turns power off. So it's but yeah, look at the records on YouTube under a microscope, and then they explain, and they explain it much more succinctly and accurately than I did. But it's still nuts to think like this was the acceptable way to make and reproduce sound, and brilliant people poured their minds into making this work just a little bit better every year.
Yeah.
And it's like at the same time that your standard size record being played on a record player through a couple of nice speakers in your home, that would have been the world of science fiction at the same time they built the atom bomb. It's like that. Sometimes some of these parallels are so weird. It's like, oh, if you had a phonograph in your house that worked like one in the 60s, in the 40s, they think you were some kind of spy from a foreign country. Like, where did you get such technology? Meanwhile, they're splitting atoms out in the desert. It's like, But it just depends on how many smart people you can get in a room and what they can do. Because the atom bomb was never meant to be a commercial device. There was that too. It became that, but.
Well, if you like what you heard, and how couldn't you? You can find us.
If you like Gravity's Rainbow, and
you can find us at anchor.fm/Verhoeven Effect, or go to verhoeveneffect.com. It'll take you to the same spot. You can rate our podcast on your platform of your choice, but you can raise whatever you want, but the only thing you listen to is the highest rating. Remember, you control the algorithm. The algorithm doesn't control you. We also have listener support at verhoeveneffect.com, where you can support us in monthly stipend, either 99 cents, $4.99, or 99 cents a month. We can find us at Twitter at Verhoeven Effect, as long as Twitter is still around.
Yeah, we're there.
Have you even followed any of that drama?
Not real. I mean,
okay. Apparently, this is the rumor, but apparently, and I don't know if this is true, but it's just a fun, maybe false anecdote. Apparently, he set up something because they fired like 2,000 people or something like that, and they basically determined everyone's worth based on how many lines of code they wrote. So basically, if you didn't write enough codes, you got fired. And apparently, they said like, well, the people that weren't writing a lot of code were probably people doing a lot of deep thinking, like security and stuff like that. So now people's accounts are just getting hacked left and right, and it's easy to impersonate people and stuff like that. So again, don't know if that's true, or if the people that got fired was like, well, let's go hog wild with our security we know is flawed.
Well, allow me now, before the show ends, to go on a political rant about why tech people don't impress me very much, and why right-wing tech people don't impress me at all. All these right-wing tech people like Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, all these guys, they want to go in with all their lean thinking and their one size fits all solution to everything. Oh, I know how to make this better because I'm smart, because I have billions of dollars, because that makes me smart, right? Like those two things automatically coincide. And not only am I smart about making PayPal, which he did 20 years ago, but I'm smart about everything, right? I understand everything about people, governance, the laws of physics, or whatever. So I've got this one shot stop solution, just like how these people thought they were going to take over politics, but by not engaging Washington, but just try. It's like, oh, we're just going to put crazy candidates in and just go in and fire everyone. We're going to drain the swamp. That didn't come from Donald Trump. That's like Peter Thiel and his people. That's where that thinking came from. And so all these guys come in and they got their whiz bang solution. Like, I'm the smartest guy in the room. And this always happens every time. It happens with these guys because they're always like, no, I don't want to pay people to do things. I want to fire people and tell everyone how smart I am. And those people you fired and everyone else, well, they turn around and fuck you because they don't. What do you think you do when you fire them? They just go jump into a grave they dug? No, they're still waiting around. They're still waiting for you. And you and everyone else like you, but you want to go in and it's like, oh, no, we can get the U.S. government down to 500 people and run efficiently. It's like, okay, cool. So this is just another version of that. This is what I see here. What you just told me is like, doesn't surprise me. Makes perfect sense because it follows a pattern here. And this is the same asshole that was going to drill holes under Los Angeles so there'd be no more congestion, build self-driving cars, which is like, he built them and they've killed about 300 people. And everyone's, but like all the stuff he says never happens. And these banks that loaned him money to buy Twitter, they're being looked into by the SEC. It's like, why did you give this guy billions of dollars to buy a company that was worth nothing? A company that on book loses $5 million a day. And the more controversial it becomes, the less advertisers want to engage with it. Because, hey, guess what? Ford doesn't want like a picture of their pickup, like buy a new F-150 next to a picture of Hitler. That's not good marketing. So no one's going to go in there and advertise with you, which is the only way you make money, unless you're going to charge people $50 a month to scream at each other, which is like, yeah, that's people are going to sign on for that. So what's your solution? It's, well, I'm going to fire the least productive employees. Based on what? Like performance reviews, like what they've done with the company, what their managers think? No, just how much they're typing on a screen. Like, brilliant. You short-circuited the whole human dynamic. Great job. So if you like what you've heard, and I know you do.
You can find us at Facebook also at Verhoeven Effect for as long as that's a thing.
Until that goes bankrupt. You can see us as like weird blobs with heads floating around. We're going to lose as much money as this, the moon program in 1 year.
You can find us on
remember, we're the smartest kids in the room.
Yeah.
Not us.
You can find us on YouTube at American Greed Factory and watch both that show and this show live and unedited. And we have t-shirts at belowthecollar.com/Greed Factory. So for the Verhoeven Effect podcast, I'm Colin.
And I'm Nathan.
Goodbye, America.
And remember, this show is only made by 2 people. And that's a lean process there. And that's somehow profitable. That's nothing about the quality of our product or if anyone gives a fuck. But